Sumerian literature consists, we now know, after many, many years of research by numerous scholars, including myself.
Imagine holding a small piece of clay in your hands, something that carries the weight of over 4,200 years of history. What if I told you this ancient object holds the key to understanding the very origins of human civilization?
Technically, that is generally known in the textbooks and among scholars as the third dynasty of Ur. That was a famous dynasty when Sumerian had a kind of renaissance.
But what we've been taught all these years is wrong. The Sumerian language, the foundation of the first known human civilization, is one of the oldest we know. But what if everything we think we know about it is based on a fundamental misunderstanding? This is the chilling reality uncovered by Samuel Noah Kramer, the man who defined the study of Sumer. And before he died, he left us a warning that was buried by those who stood to lose the most. The discoveries hidden beneath the dust. Samuel Noah Kramer, the world's foremost expert on Sumer, spent decades in a dimly lit basement at the University of Pennsylvania Museum. Amidst the dust and clay, Kramer sifted through one of the largest collections of Sumerian tablets ever found, about 30,000 in total. These ancient relics, preserved for thousands of years, held the secrets to the beginnings of human civilization. For decades, his groundbreaking translations shaped our understanding of ancient civilizations, offering us a window into the thoughts and lives of the Sumerians. But in 1988, after years of work, one simple tablet turned everything upside down. The Penn Museum's collection was vast, but even among them, this tablet stood out as an enigma. This was not just any tablet. It was a key to unraveling everything. In fact, the very translation Kramer published in 1949 was, in his own words, a colossal mistake. And it wasn't just a small error. It was a mistake that would change the way we look at history itself. The tablet held secrets Kramer had never anticipated, and those secrets could dismantle everything he thought he knew about the Sumerians. This realization had the power to alter our understanding of early civilization on a global scale. Kramer's revelation. In 1988, at the age of 91, Kramer revisited an old translation that had nagged at him for decades. This tablet, dating back to 2100 BCE, told a tale of God's bestowing civilization onto humans, just as every other ancient culture believed. This was the widely accepted view. It fit perfectly into the established narrative, where gods were the key to humanity's rise. But something felt wrong. Kramer, determined to reapproach it with fresh eyes, spent hours analyzing the Sumerian text once again. And then it hit him. "I have had it wrong," he whispered. "All of it for 40 years. What he had uncovered was not just a simple translation mistake. It was a foundational shift in the way we should understand the Sumerian civilization. This wasn't merely a matter of rethinking one text. It was a seismic shift that threatened the entire framework that modern scholars had built upon. But this discovery was too big. It would shake the very foundation of his life's work. The man behind the discovery. Born in 1897, Samuel Noah Kramer was no stranger to struggle. His journey into Sumerian studies began late, after a series of career changes that saw him drifting between different fields. His family had fled Eastern Europe during turbulent times, and they found a new home in Philadelphia. When he finally stumbled upon Sumerian, he encountered a language that had been dead for millennia. It had no Rosetta Stone, no bilingual dictionary, no guide to help him decipher its complexities. He was, essentially, starting from scratch. But Kramer was undeterred. Over the years, he painstakingly worked through texts, building a dictionary and vocabulary from scratch. His obsession with understanding the Sumerian texts drove him to develop his own methods of comparison and interpretation, a process that required intense dedication and intellect. By the time he published History Begins at Sumer in 1956, Kramer had given the modern world its foundational understanding of early human civilization. Every piece of Sumerian literature, the first love poems, the first schools, and the first legal codes, came from Kramer's translations, shaping how we view the dawn of humanity. But something was changing. Starting in the 1960s, Kramer began to notice subtle inconsistencies. He started inserting small admissions into his work, footnotes that explained how certain Sumerian words didn't have direct English equivalents, or that some texts were still obscure. By the 1980s, Kramer became increasingly troubled by his findings. In one of his papers, Kramer wrote, "The more I study these texts, the less certain I become about their true meaning." His colleagues dismissed it. They thought he was growing too old, spending too much time buried in the tablets. But Kramer was seeing something that no one else was willing to acknowledge: a fundamental misreading of Sumerian thought. The breaking point. In 1988, Kramer finally cracked it. The very tablet he had translated 40 years earlier held a hidden meaning that had eluded him for decades. What he had once interpreted as God's gifting civilization to humanity was, in fact, a profound statement about human potential. The words he had translated as gift actually meant awakening or remembering. The Sumerians hadn't received civilization from the gods. They had awakened to their own latent abilities. This revelation flipped centuries of understanding. This discovery went beyond a small error. It redefined the entire framework of Sumerian civilization. It wasn't about a divine intervention. It was about humans realizing their own power. This newfound understanding opened a window into how early humans perceived themselves and their capabilities, turning everything he had ever taught upside down. Kramer's breakthrough was not met with excitement. When he shared his findings with prominent figures in the field, their reactions were far from what one might expect. Dr. William Ho from Yale and Dr. Miguel Seville from the University of Chicago were both visibly shaken. But instead of engaging with the new interpretation, they dismissed it outright. They told Kramer to rest, that he had lost his touch. But Kramer wasn't just speculating. He was presenting evidence that would unravel an entire field of study. If taken seriously, his discoveries would require a complete rewrite of the history we have been taught. And that's when it became clear why no one wanted to listen. Admitting Kramer was right would mean dismantling decades of academic work. The resistance was not just academic, but institutional, with countless careers and legacies built on the very foundations Kramer was challenging. Kramer's discoveries were not limited to the translation of that one tablet. He had unearthed a deeper understanding of the Sumerian worldview, one that rejected the modern categories of religion, creation, and the divine. He realized that Sumerians had no concept of religion as we understand it. They didn't see a distinction between the natural and the supernatural. What we call gods might simply have been people or beings with a heightened consciousness, a perception that modern humans have lost. Kramer's final interviews, recorded in his last months, revealed everything. But despite their importance, these interviews were never made public. According to sources at the Penn Museum, the footage was quietly shelved, never incorporated into any official retrospective. The academic establishment chose to ignore Kramer's doubts, continuing to build on the work he had spent his last years trying to undo. The powerful institutions that had once lauded Kramer now chose to suppress his final message, leaving the world unaware of the seismic shift he had uncovered. The world that Kramer had helped build was collapsing around him. His translations had shaped the academic understanding of human history, but now he was telling the world that it was all wrong. This wasn't just about one scholar's interpretation. It was about the entire field of Sumerology. The cost of admitting that Kramer had been right was too high. Too many textbooks, dissertations, and careers had been built on his work. The reaction from his colleagues was not out of malice, but fear. The academic world could not afford to admit that its foundation was wrong. And so, the alternative, that Kramer had simply lost his mind, was easier to accept. Kramer's passing in 1990 marked the end of an era, but his discoveries never reached the world. The textbooks and museum labels continued to teach his outdated translations. The academic world moved on, unwilling to challenge the legacy of the man who had defined it. But the truth is still there, buried in the Penn Museum's archives, waiting to be rediscovered. The tablets that Kramer examined, which hold the key to understanding Sumerian civilization, are still sitting in museums around the world, waiting for someone to look at them with fresh eyes. Kramer's final plea echoed through his last interview. "Before I die, please listen. We have gotten this wrong. Not the details, but the whole framework." This was not just about a single mistake. It was about the entire way we understand the past. The history we teach today is still built on a false foundation. Samuel Noah Kramer spent his final years trying to show us the truth. And though his warnings were ignored, the question remains: what would happen if we finally took a closer look at the Sumerian tablets and understood them as they were meant to be understood?